Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott and I'm the Emperor of Stomaria. Today I want to discuss a new path forward for Stomaria and for the Empire. So over the last few months in particular, I have been carefully considering the path that lay ahead of me and lay ahead of Stomaria. Because while I am obviously intertwined with Stomaria as the Emperor of Stomaria, as the founder of Stomaria, I do nevertheless have aspects of my life in which Stomaria does not play a part. And above all else, it's the safety, the security, and the prosperity of my family that occupies my thoughts first and foremost. Now, Stomaria doesn't detract from that by and large, in the sense that acquiring additional lands and utilizing those lands in order to grow our own food, supply our own water, generate our own energy, to establish housing and industries, this does not automatically detract from my family's well-being in any shape or form. However, more recently, I've been given the opportunity to protect and enhance the interests of my family, the details of which go beyond the scope of this video, but this would have a negative impact on the progress and the development of Stomaria itself. Specifically, it means that the intended acquisition of additional territory via the imperial family will no longer be taking place, at least not for the foreseeable future. And I won't sugarcoat it, this is a major setback for Stomaria, for the progress and the development of our fledgling nation. It completely upends the plans, the vision that I had for Stomaria. And for me, it is truly devastating to know that this has had to happen. Because at the end of the day, as I have said before, my family has to come before Stomaria. Advancing the interests of Stomaria at the expense of my family makes absolutely no sense from my own perspective. And so this is a decision I don't take lightly, but it is necessary. And while this wasn't the principal or primary reason for this decision, I should also note that trying to acquire land within striking distance of where we reside has proven to be exceptionally difficult, in the sense that where we reside in the southeast of England, land prices can be extraordinarily high. For example, these are the sorts of lands that we could purchase, each of these plots being within 40 miles of our home. Now, if you consider this plot measuring 0.7 acres, what would you pay for it? Because the price tag on this property is currently £100,000. Or what about this plot measuring 1.09 acres? Well, you're still looking at £100,000. Or what about this plot measuring 0.32 acres? Well, you're in luck. It's not £100,000, it's £80,000. And to be clear, these kind of plots are not building plots, and they're not plots with any kind of special permissions in place. It's just pasture land. And indeed, some of these plots are within the green belt, which, for those that don't know, means it would be virtually impossible to develop these plots in any way. And while there will obviously be cheaper plots available, they will be cheaper for a reason. And at the end of the day, if we are going to purchase land in the southeast, we will be paying an absolutely massive premium for substandard or incredibly tiny plots of land. And from my perspective, spending these sorts of sums on plots of land that are very, very small or incredibly substandard, without even considering solicitors' fees, insurance, or the development of the land itself, is simply unthinkable. And this is especially true if we're talking about plots of land that are in the green belt and can't be developed in any shape or form, meaning that you'd spend £100,000 on a glorified vegetable patch that's 40 miles from where I reside. And so with all that, we come to a very simple question. What now? And the answer is simple. We find alternative means to develop and expand Stomaria. We still have southward, a land that has been developed over the last 3 years to the point where it can now start to reap the rewards. And if our followers and citizens who have been following this journey with us over the past 3 years, they will see how we have transformed this land into what it was, into what it is. And over the coming months, we will be gradually releasing details as to how we're going to better utilize this land in order to advance our values and objectives. But in terms of how we expand Stomaria's territorial holdings, the answer to this came earlier this year with the introduction of our second ever province, Porta Lagoa. This particular plot of land, this territory of Stomaria, is not owned by me directly, but it is owned by Lord Seraphim, a noble of Stomaria. And he decided to integrate his land into Stomaria as a mark of support for what we are trying to do. And it's through this means that Stomaria may yet expand its territorial holdings. to have private Stomarian citizens acquire private territory, private land, in which they can utilize it to advance their own interests as well as our own, to grow their own food, to collect their own water, to generate their own energy, to establish their own businesses, and more besides, in order to more readily engage in the trade network that we're continuing to establish across the world, in order to advance the shared interests of the Stomarian community. Now, this means of expanding Stomaria's territorial holdings is nothing especially groundbreaking or new, in the sense it's something that we could have always done, and it is something that we started in practice earlier this year when Porto Lagoa became our second ever province. However, it is a means of expanding Stomaria's territorial holdings that I intend to lean on more heavily, because it does accomplish two things. First, it alleviates the pressure on me and my family in terms of trying to acquire additional lands, additional territory for Stomaria, while also trying to juggle everything else around us. Because ultimately, Stomaria is not made up of just me. There are many citizens within Stomaria. There is a community within Stomaria. A nation is not a single family unit. A nation is not a single individual. It consists and comprises of far more than that. And that brings me to the second point, which is that it accomplishes one of our core values and objectives, which is to encourage citizens of Stomaria to acquire their own lands, because we are fierce proponents of private property, and this feeds into that narrative. And beyond the development and expansion of Stomaria's territorial holdings, we also want to place greater emphasis on trying to get more nations and more communities to become integrated into the Empire or to partner with the Empire, because we want to make sure that as many people as possible and as many nations and communities as possible are available to become a part of this vision that we have for the future, where we are attaining greater levels of self-reliance and self-determination through legal and legitimate means, where we are building a better future for ourselves and our children. But this is not something that a single individual, a single community even, can accomplish by itself. We need to try to start establishing these trade networks in more serious, meaningful ways, and we have already begun this process. Because as many people already know, Stomaria, first and foremost, is building an empire of trade, commerce, and enterprise. It's about trying to build mutually beneficial arrangements that is tangible, and I want to make sure that as many communities and as many individuals involved in those communities can benefit from association with Stomaria, with the Empire, and with all the partners that we ourselves are associated with. Further still, I want to encourage more people that support Stomaria to become Stomarian citizens. I have dropped the ball on this for some time, in the sense that I've never really considered citizenship numbers to be overly critical to what we were doing, in the sense that more citizens does not automatically translate into more success. However, this is something that I want to pick up. This is something I want to drive home a bit more. If you are truly dedicated to what we are building, if you support Stomaria in a way that makes you want to become a part of the wider community that we are establishing, then get in touch and join us, because you may have a skill set, you may have interests, you may even have lands that can help to develop and advance the interests of Stomaria, of the Stomarian community, and of you personally. And by increasing the number of Stomarian citizens, by utilising and developing existing Stomarian lands, by integrating more lands into Stomaria through private Stomarian citizens, and by trying to integrate more nations and communities into the trade network that we are establishing across the world, it is my hope that Stomaria and the Empire can continue to prosper and can continue to advance the interests of all those involved without the necessity for me to sacrifice my family's well-being in that pursuit. With that in mind, if there are those that wish to establish some kind of formal relations with Stomaria and the Empire, or there are those that wish to join Stomaria as private Stomarian citizens, then do feel free to get in touch and let us know. If you want to learn more about Stomaria or play an active role in our development and expansion, visit our website at www.stomaria.com and find out what it means to be a Stomarian.